So I wanted to give a special shout out today to a couple of families. We do a lot of work at the Ronald McDonald House. We have loved that over the years because no matter how much we feel like we give, guess what happens? We get back so much more in return. One of the families who I've just loved getting to know over the years, they're an incredible family. They're joining us here today from Quakertown, the Millers. So if you guys could raise your hand, everybody give them a round of applause. Great to have you folks here. As a pastor, you're never supposed to single people out, which I don't unless I want to. So I am going to single out another family that had the privilege of getting to know at the Ronald McDonald House over a number of meals there, where they were there with a sick child. And that's Rob and Stephanie. Rob and Stephanie are up in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. Rob unfortunately had a heart attack last week. Found out about it. He said, Rob, we are going to give you the loudest Get Well, Rob shout out from the New Church Live audience. So are you ready to say get well? You got to say it. You can't say it from here. You got to say it from your toes. All right? And at the count of three, we're going to say get well, Rob, from the bottom of your toes the whole way on up. You ready? 1, 2, 3. There you go. I can see him right now. Boots are going, yes, yes. From the land of Rocky, yes. So with that, I'd like to get our day started. Again, very, very precious day. And as we built the service, we were trying to think of, okay, how do we sort of address caregiving at different stages of life? From parenting to marriage to the later years with Alzheimer's. How do we sort of do it? Because caregiving can come in many ways, shapes, and forms. And I would love to say, I just couldn't imagine a better group to have worked with. We've met online, we've met in person. The cool part about this, folks, is New Church Live. Again, we broadcast out all over the country. And for a number of these folks, this is their very first time actually in the building. And it was funny when Rick walked in today and he's like, oh, there's the boys in the band. And you know where you walk in and you're like the little nerdy kid with the calculator and somebody points at the football players and goes like, there's the cool guys. That's what it was like for me. Seeing there all the cool guys, the guys in the band. And fun to watch like those kinds of connections. So it's a very special day, a day where we get to honor caregivers and think about what this means in our lives and what God can offer, what Christ can offer to us in terms of how to navigate, as Rebecca sang about, what can be some very hard times. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with our introductions. Our introductions will be made by Mary Beth Bond.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here with all of you today. Like Chuck said, my name is Mary Beth Bond. I'm actually the daughter of one of the speakers here today, which means that I have the privilege of getting to know firsthand what a blessing a caregiver is. Caregivers are some of the most selfless people I've ever met. I know in my house, being a caregiver is a 24-hour job. But they're also some of the most resilient people. Did you know that my dad is almost always happy? I'll call him from college and I'll say, I'm so grouchy, I missed lunch, I have too much homework, and I really just wish I was at home. And he'll say, the funniest thing happened to me at work today. Or, Mom did really well in therapy, let me tell you about it. Or, I'm sorry you're having a bad day, but tomorrow will be better. And that's sort of how I see him approaching taking care of my mom. It's a bad situation, but choosing to see the good in it, we're making it a little bit better. And I'm really proud of him for being thrown into caregiving and taking it on with a positive mindset and a bright outlook. That has made all the difference for our family. I'm so excited to introduce you to our speakers today. We have 3 wonderful speakers, Kim, my dad, Rick, and Trin. So if you'll please help me introduce Kim, our first speaker. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kim. I've been asked today and honored by my high school teacher and coach, who I call Mr. Blair. You all know him as Chuck. I first started by looking up the definition of caregiver, an individual who attends to the needs of another. Sounds much like the job title of a mother, too. The mother's job description is endless. Anything from housekeeper to chef, event planner to teacher, referee to boo-boo fixer. According to the internet, on any given day, a mother holds 52 job titles. Not an easy task by any means. I have two kids, ages 9 and 12. On the average day in my world, the washing machine is running, dryer drying, 3 baskets of dirty laundry still lined up. The phone rings, there's emails to answer, all while the small child dances around me. My mind wanders to, will Chris be home on time? Is he in traffic? Am I cooking a balanced meal? Did they finish their milk today? What are they fighting about now? Common thoughts of any mom. In addition to the normal mom routine, my children are special needs. My daughter has a rare genetic condition, and my son is a diabetic with asthma. Add in the, did he do his insulin? Did I see him do it? How do I stress to him the importance of taking care of himself? Did Jordan have all her meds? Did she finish the Pediasure? Tonight is a shot night. Did I inventory the meds? Do I need to order meds? Oh yeah, there's appointments too. As I said, a mother's job description is endless, but so is her love. My journey began almost 10 years ago, 17 weeks pregnant with my second child, a girl, the first granddaughter. We were all so thrilled. But I received results from the doctor that were heartbreaking, and additional testing was needed. Among other problems, it was believed that the placenta was failing. I was given 3 days to decide if I wanted to abort. I was told, you will not carry this baby to term, but I did. You will not bring this baby home, but I did. She was very small, but she was feisty, making her presence known from the very start, and she did well initially. It was around 9 months when she started to fall off the growth charts, and she was sick constantly. Her cell counts were low, and she suffered from pancreatic insufficiency. Life quickly turned into one hospital admission after another. One doctor appointment always led to more. My mother's intuition knew there was more to this, and I began to Google. My search led me to a rare genetic condition, and the more I read, the more convinced I was. It was as if they were describing my baby. Not long after, Jordan was officially given the Shwachman-Diamond syndrome diagnosis. SDS affects multiple systems and organs of the body, primarily the bone marrow, the pancreas, and the bones. Jordan's list of ailments is astonishing, and although her hospital admissions have decreased substantially, we still spend a large chunk of our time at the hospital for blood work, tests, procedures, and IVIG. When something as simple as a paper cut can threaten the life of your child, being proactive and keeping Jordan as healthy as possible is our #1 priority. We had the recent discovery and then quick disappearance of trisomy 13 in her marrow, which is a leukemic clone. We are actively searching for a marrow donor and have been fortunate to be picky because of its disappearance. We pray every day that this clone does not return, but we have been warned of the reality that this type of clone is not one likely to disappear. Prognosis for SDS is less than favorable, with the majority not surviving the second decade of life, but we remain hopeful. And then there's Coy, my sweet, sensitive 12-year-old boy with a huge heart and terrible asthma is now in year 4 of his type 1 diabetes. Coy's asthma was diagnosed as an infant, and we managed it fairly well. There was nothing the normal nebulizer treatment or occasional antibiotic couldn't control. It was during the summer that things changed for Coy. Something didn't seem right. His appetite plummeted, his weight started to fall, and he was drinking constantly. As a mother who is familiar with the medical field already, Coy was textbook diabetic. It was a Friday morning when I called the doctor for an appointment, and nothing was available for him until the following Tuesday. Well, Sunday night, we ended up in the ER. Koi had dropped 12 pounds and was in full-blown ketoacidosis. To say I was terrified was an understatement. The addition of diabetes to our life has compounded the worry. It is easy for an adult to understand the long-term effects that manifest from high sugars or the dangers of low sugars. But how do you explain that to a young boy that doesn't want to be different? We often deal with the normal preteen laziness. However, that doesn't bode well when insulin is needed to survive, yet forgotten, or "I didn't hear you, Mom." The asthma often triggers unstable sugars, and unstable sugars often trigger the asthma. It's a delicate balance at times. We average 85 appointments a year between the two kids. Each appointment is usually associated with a phone call or a follow-up. It's a full-time job in itself. Caregiving is not something I have given much thought until asked to help with this service. I am often asked, "How do you do it? I can't imagine being in your shoes." Truth is, 10 years ago, I would have said the same thing. But it's not a choice. They need special care, and I am their mother. So I reached deep down, and with my husband holding my hand and our family behind us, we pushed through. Some days are tougher than others. Some choices are nauseating. But as I said, a mother's love is endless. I leave you today with a little perspective, a short story sent to me by a good friend after Jordan's diagnosis, and I've always held it dear. It's called Welcome to Holland by Emily Pearl Kingsley. I'm often asked to describe the experience of raising a child with a disability, to try to help people who have not shared this unique experience understand it, to imagine how it would feel. It's like this. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks, you make your wonderful plans. The Colosseum, the Michelangelo David, the gondolas in Venice. You may learn some handy Italian phrases. It's all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The stewardess comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, you ask? What do you mean, Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life, I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in the flight plan. You've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is that they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of disease. It's just a different place. So you must go out and buy new guidebooks. You must learn a whole new language, and you will meet a whole new group of people you would have never met. It's a different place. It's slower than Italy, less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there a while, you catch your breath, you look around, and you begin to notice that Holland has windmills, Holland has tulips, and Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy, and they're all bragging about the wonderful time they had there. And for the rest of your life, you will say, "Yes, that's where I was supposed to go. That's where I had planned." And the pain of that will never, ever, ever go away, because the loss of that dream is a very significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to go to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special, very lovely things about Holland. Thank you.
All my students were that bright at Pocono Mountain High School. Thank you so much. Rick Bond.
Taller. So, Kim's the perfect person for me to reflect back on and tell you that when I think about caregiving, I wish for those who are cared for that everyone had someone as nurturing and loving as some of the other caregivers that I've had the privilege to meet, not only on this stage and with this group, but since we started on this journey. And unfortunately, in our family, I'm not that guy. In fact, I never would have imagined myself doing the things that I've done over the last couple of years. I think the platform skill for caregiving is love, that I had and that I do have. But it's in our family, my wife was a wonderful caregiver, unbelievable. She took care of everything, magical with our children and even other people's children. And she was such a guide in our life. The things that Kim described in terms of a mother, I thought of my wife. She was such a steward of everything that we did that when she first had her injury, when she first got hurt, I remember calling my two boys together, and I want to tell you about our family first. I guess I should tell you. 5 children, 30 years of marriage, now 31, almost 30 when this happened. And I have 2 adult children, Lisa and Michelle, who are phenomenal in helping us through this, and Mary Beth, who you met, our middle child, and then the 2 boys who are at home still with us and are still at home with us today. They were 13 and 15 when this happened, 15 and 17 now. That's Charles and Michael. So I said to the guys 2 weeks into this, my wife's in the hospital in a coma, and we couldn't find anything. We couldn't find car keys, phone chargers. We had no socks. And I said, guys, it's like we never knew that she was doing it, but she walked along behind us, and wherever we threw this stuff, she put it in the right place. And we thought we had it together, but we really were helpless without her. So it's quite a transition to take on a role of independence for them to a certain degree, although I'm here for them, but also taking on her responsibilities as well as caring for her. What happened? What happened was that my wife, who was the most amazingly healthy and health-oriented person that you'd ever want to meet, just turned 50 and, watched her diet, exercised, rode her bike, did aerobics, walked. She suffered a brain aneurysm, which basically means that in a tiny little blood vessel in her brain, a little bubble formed, and when that bubble burst, and ultimately she had a seizure, her whole head filled with blood. And in spite of the efforts of the doctors, we knew very soon. My daughter had driven her to the hospital, and she was medevaced to the shock trauma unit. But we knew within a few days that our whole life had changed, and that she would never be an independent person again. And in fact, it was the most helpless feeling that I could ever imagine. I can't even begin to tell you, as someone who wanted desperately to do something, there was nothing I could do for her. She was in a coma for 2 months, and during that time, we went through every range of emotions, and ultimately, some primal instinct came through for me, and the one thing I felt I could do for her was bring her home. And at the time, I honestly didn't know, were we bringing her home to live or bringing her home to die, but I wanted to bring her home. She made our home the most wonderful, special place that we all enjoyed. And for her, home and family were everything. So if there was one gift that I could give her after that, it was to bring her home. It took us 4 months. And in fact, she finally emerged from the coma. She went through therapy and rehab. But by the time we got her home, as the doctors had predicted, she was far from being able to take care of herself for any of her daily activities. There was some new equipment. What happened for her, she was on a ventilator and a feeding tube for her, it was about 45 days. Normally, they try to get people off that in 30 days. And so when the ventilator was taken away and the feeding tube, which I think was in her nose, if I'm not mistaken, but when those were taken away, they gave her a tracheostomy. I hope I got that word right. Probably not. And where they punch a hole right here. And for people who are maybe able to breathe independently, hopefully able to breathe independently, but still not able to be completely independent, that's to give the doctors or the caregivers access in case they begin to choke on their own fluids. And then the feeding tube, which is just, punching a hole in her stomach. And of course, we've all seen them on TV, but it's really nothing like what's on TV. In fact, nothing is like it's on TV, by the way. But so when we brought her home, she had that equipment, and then we had the full-time responsibilities of providing care for her on a daily basis. And I'll tell you that my adult daughters, who gave up so much of their life, one daughter left her job, the other daughter, it was her first year of marriage, and she and her husband did so much. But I will tell you that those girls got their mother's natural ability for caregiving. And so they wrote notes about her care, and we developed a system. I worked my shift for those first few months, and they put notes all over her bedroom. We rearranged the whole house. So we're in what used to be the boys' game room, and we moved them in the dining room and all that. But those notes are still up there. So I'm following a template in the care for my children that she left, and in the care for my wife that my daughters left. I'm far from the brains of this particular operation, but we've made it work. And so what I do is every day I get up on a school day between 4:30 and 5, and I prepare her medicines, which she takes first, and then I bathe her, I get her dressed, get her cleaned up, and we start our day. And it's actually a really important time for the two of us. We talk about what's going on that day. And by 6:40, it's time to wake the guys up, and I feed them breakfast. I cook them breakfast. And that time that we wake them up, one of my sons, my older son, Charlie, he wrote a paper at school where he said, my mother was this gentle woman who just kind of showed up in the room, and my dad, it's like an elephant barreling down the hall. And he closed by saying, I've actually started to look forward to talking to the elephant in the morning, which I'm okay with, by the way. So that's important time, because as much as I love her, I love our children, and I'm accountable to her for our children. So it's a big job. At that point, we're getting ourselves ready. At some point, I've got to do all of that same stuff for myself, by the way. And then at 8 o'clock, we have a nurse who comes in while I go to work, because guess what? We got to pay for all of this. And so I love my job, and I have very understanding employers, but I don't want to make them have to be too understanding. So I've got a lot to do during the day with my job. So in the evening, it kind of goes in reverse. I come home, cook dinner for everybody, cleaning and this type of thing. I give her evening medicines, her evening foods, and then it's my responsibility. And another special time we have during the day where I get her ready for bed, cleaned up, and, in her nightgown and so forth. So she's not able to walk or stand. She is able to do some things with her right hand. She's the most heroic person I've ever met. I still believe that in the hospital somewhere, when the doctor said she was going to pass away, she just looked down at us from heaven and said, okay, you guys can't handle this. I'm going to have to come back now. And she's actually learning, which I'm so proud of her, a device which is called eye gaze, which will enable her hopefully to communicate. But she can't speak, she can't swallow, and it's been a long road of almost 2 years. So on the weekends, we pay bills, we do laundry, we do school lunches, and a lot of other stuff. We don't have care in the house on the weekends. It's just not practical financially, but it is a special family time, and from time to time, my older children are able to help out. So that's who we are, that's what we do, but I did want to take just a minute and really recognize the fact that when I first set this goal for her and for our family, and I thought about what I had to do, I said, hey, this is impossible. I can't do it. And you know what? It was impossible, and it is impossible. But we put it in God's hands. And one thing I've learned is not all the angels are in heaven. There have been some pretty remarkable people that have helped us. And one of the things I love about New Church Live is to hear the stories of this congregation and the things that many of you have done for folks in the Ronald McDonald House or the neonatal unit, and some of the great stories, because I can promise you as a caregiver, as somebody who's been in that situation, we could not have done it had it not been for our wonderful friends and family, and really even total strangers who supported us along the way. The story that I think about from the Bible, and, God stores all these wonderful stories in the back of my mind, and they come up as we go through some of these situations. And I can't tell you all the wonderful hidden meanings that Chuck could, but I can tell you what it means to me. And it's a story from the book of Exodus where Moses was told by God as the children of Israel went into battle that they were going to win the battle. But what Moses needed to do was he needed to raise his arms up to the heavens. And as long as he kept his arms up, they would win the battle. Well, as you can imagine, when the battle started, there's Moses with his arms up, and they're winning the battle. And then suddenly the battle started to turn, and his brother Aaron and another guy look over, and there's Moses. And it's so graphic. I mean, we know how your arms must feel after a while being up, and they're so heavy, and they start to come down. And so they got a stone, 2 stones actually, a couple of big stones, and rolled them up under his arms. And I'll tell you that for us, initially, it was that immediate family, just like Moses, and our pastors, our minister. I know that first night, our local pastor, who was right there with us, holding hands, praying, reading the Bible. But anyway, even the 2 stones weren't holding those arms up. So ultimately what they did was they started to take turns, and they held his arms up, and that was how they were able to win the battle. Well, I can promise you that we wouldn't have won this battle if it wasn't for the many people who held our arms up. And it's always been an unbelievable blessing and surprise when it happened. Those first couple of months, people that brought us meals, and we would spend the day in the hospital, and the only normal time we had was at 1 hour at night. It might be 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night where all of us, and by that, I mean, it was like a crash pad at my place. We had mattresses on the floor. We had family from everywhere. We'd get together and have a meal, and for 1 hour we felt normal, and that's what got us through. We have neighbors up the street that have brought us food every day, or every month, I would say, or so, since this first started. And it's always when I just throw my hands up and say, I can't do anymore, and I grab a frozen pizza. I don't know if my son is sending a text and ratting me out, get down here with food, but they'll show up and say, hey, we were making some soup, and we just made a little bit of extra. And 3 months after Angela's injury, we had some friends that called us up and said, hey, spring break's coming up, which was the first surprise. And then we're going to Aruba, and we like to take Michael along, which was just unbelievable to think, here's a 13-year-old guy going through things that I could never imagine going through at 13. And what a wonderful gift and what a wonderful surprise. Mother's Day of this year, I had a ruptured disc in my back doing something stupid, caring for my wife, and my back was messed up. So we had weeds overgrowing in the front of the house, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get to it. And one day my neighbor knocks on the door and says, hey, Rick, we just wanted to do something nice for Angela. We're all going to chip in. We're going to have some guys come in, throw some mulch down, plant some flowers. And it's just been like that. Just when I felt like I couldn't do anymore, just when those arms started to come down, it's been a miracle that someone has shown up, and it is a miracle. It's straight from God. I want to close by giving you my definition of a caregiver, a working definition, and I'll tell you 2 stories to get there. The first is when Angela was emerging from her coma, and we had all of these ambitions for her and all of these hopes and dreams, and we met with this incredible doctor at the rehab place, and we talked to him and told him what we were hoping for her, and he said, listen, there's something I want you to know. She can't fail. She can't fail. She can only do what she's able to do. What's happened will dictate a lot of that, when she can do it and if she can do it. And for me personally, that resonated, and I've said it to her many times. She can never fail me. And the second is Mary Beth. When we went through a period where the doctors were saying to us at the time where she was coming off the ventilator, would she really want to go on? And, of course, at that time, they only gave us an option, a life in an institution. Nobody ever said, hey, maybe you bring her home. So it was a challenging time. We talked about it as a family, and we were gridlocked. And finally, I asked Mary Beth, as I said, she's our middle child. And by the way, yes, it's true. Nobody ever asked the middle child anything. So, and it's probably a mistake, because what she said was unbelievable. She said, Dad, you know what? If Mom could speak right now, then I agree. You know what she'd say? She'd say, I'm at peace with my God. I'm ready to go. But she said, you know what? If it was any one of us that was in that bed, she would never leave our side. She would never give up. And to me, that's what being a caregiver has become. She can never fail, and we can never give up. Thank you.
And our final speaker hails, she came out with her wonderful husband, Joe, hails the whole way from Phoenix. They came out just to speak to you folks today. Trent.
Thank you. My name is Trin Rose Seeley, and I was born up 2nd Street Pike at Holy Redeemer Hospital. And when I returned to this area to live as an adult, my washing machine broke. And so I did laundry down the pike at the Southampton laundromat. The first time I went in there, I felt like I was home. And why did I feel like that about a laundromat I'd never been in? I learned many years later that it was in this very laundromat, while my mom was doing laundry, that I decided it was time to be born. We made it to the hospital in time. But somehow I knew that this was a place with an important memory. People living with Alzheimer's or a related dementia also know things beyond the confusion and forgetting. Somehow they know. The rancher who asked me, so Trin, what do you know about horses? The woman who woke up every day uncomfortable, wet, embarrassed, nevertheless pointed out the portrait of her on the wall, 6 years old, ringlety curls, and would say, do you know who that is? The man who was grumbly out of sorts was shuffling along with his feet. But as soon as we would go to the piano and play the song, it had to be you, do, 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 it had to be you, then he'd wake up and sit down and play the whole song. Da, 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 da. The woman who, when we would take our scenic drives in the Rocky Mountains, would point to the lake as we went by and say, that's the lake where we always used to have picnics. And then we'd drive through town and she'd say, and that's the church where I sang alto for 40 years. It was a wonderful time. When this woman grew up and lived her adult life thousands of miles away from that place. People know what is important to them, who they are, and what they love. By listening, I learn what they need to feel secure, to trust that their needs will be met, that they are okay, that they are home. My rancher friend liked my answer about horses, so I could work with him, become part of his team. Ms. Ringlety Curls told me that's who she is. And she taught me how to set the tone for a happy morning. Mr. Piano Man would smile and feel better that morning or afternoon or evening. And Ms. Alto put herself back on the map. She belonged in this new chapter of her life. She was home. With 5.6 million people diagnosed with Alzheimer's, 3.2 million being women and 1.8 million men, 10% of those under age 65, more than 15 million caregivers. We need to focus on what can lighten our steps as spouses, children, and friends. We have a slide coming up of a woman that I've known for several years. I teach an art class with her, and she loves to draw. This is a picture of a bird, an actual bird from Australia that is actually all those colors. She worked very subtly to capture it all. There's a picture of purple cactus flowers. Now that I live in Arizona, I'm taking pictures of what's there, and this purple flower always attracted her eye. She chooses it nearly every session. I've had years and years of art classes with her, and we might sing and tell stories about holidays, seasons, pets, the rain, and she'll look through the photographic book and look, and she'll open to this page and say, yes, a purple flower. I'm going to paint that. I'm going to draw that today. And she did it every time. There's another picture that we have that's a butterfly. She just drew this at the end of May this year. She traced it because it's harder for her to freehand pictures, but we gave her a butterfly to trace. Then she filled it in herself. But by her choices, these purple flowers and butterflies, she taught all the volunteers of the class, the college students visiting, the artists in the community art center, what she loved. And even as she fades energetically, her life comes back to her when she gets to draw purple flowers and butterflies. She is given this opportunity every time we're together. What we love is who we are. My pastor in Phoenix just shared a sermon about the miracle of the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. My paraphrasing of the story. Jesus said, "We must feed the people." And they answered, "We don't have enough for everyone." Then Jesus asks, "But what do you have? What do you have?" We have 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Yes, I can work with that. I can feed the 5,000 from these baskets. Caregivers work intently and intensely for months, days, and years to give care to the ones they love. We need to fill our cup. God is there to fill our cup so we can give another a drink. In my caregiving, I have learned from the people I've cared for that they know what's important to them, and that if I know, I can provide those things that fill their cup too, with trust and laughter and a feeling of home. When the time comes to add more caregivers to the team, it's important to remember the right promise. The right promise is, we'll walk this path together, and I'll make sure you have what you need. This is an expanding promise that you can keep. 2 passages I've taken from Swedenborgian Christianity's pages are these. The nature of every individual is determined by his or her deepest love. The nature of every individual is determined by his or her deepest love. My friend, the piano player, with that song, "It had to be you, a wonderful you, had to be you." He couldn't retrieve that song on his own. He needed someone to remind him of who he was, what his deepest love was, what he knew. It worked every single time to bring him back to himself, back home to comfort and joy, and to all of us around him. And a second passage, When we suffer physically, our soul does not suffer. It merely feels distress. After victory, God relieves that distress and washes it away like tears from our eyes. I've seen the transformation from distressed and confused to calm and content with music, stories, and art. The culture is understanding and sharing this perspective in the award-winning film Alive Inside, through the culture change group called the Eden Alternative, and the organization called the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation, who knows that healthy lifestyles are built on holistic choices. Come visit me on facebook.com, Caregiver Heart, for more wonderful resources from all around the world. A person is not lost because we can't communicate the same way anymore. Our essential lives are protected by God. And as God's love flows through us, we can let it flow on and be present for someone who needs to be reminded of what they know. People living with Alzheimer's know what is important to them, who they are, and what they love. By listening and delivering a person's life back to them, you or another professional caregiver, if and when you need them, can learn what a person needs to feel secure, to trust that their needs will be met, that they are okay, that they are home. Thank you.
So beautiful, beautiful words there, beautiful thoughts. And I want to take a moment, and if these folks could all stand up for a second, and if we could give them a warm round of our thanks for today. So we're going to close today's service with a prayer. And as we close this, I'd ask you to think about these beautiful words from the book Jeremiah. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. So again, thank you folks very much. I'd ask you now to please join me in prayer. If you could come on up. I'm going to offer a prayer. You have the opportunity to say a silent prayer, a moment of quiet meditation, the Lord's Prayer as you know it. And then after we get done with the prayer, you're welcome to come on up with your little sign honoring a caregiver as we do Stand By Me. All I would ask is little kids, we all know that little child who would love nothing more than to jump off this stage, or the husband who would love to jump off this stage. So if those folks could stay down here and people who aren't tempted to jump could come on up, would be great. Would be great. Also, if you haven't done a sign but you're moved and you'd like to, we have extra paper right over here. So please join me in prayer. So Lord, I start with this. I start with this. Simple gratitude for what Kim, Rick, Trin, what they offered, Lord, what they offered from their hearts. Allow, Lord, that story somehow to get into our lives. Allow us to hear it as threshold wisdom. As Rick said, that platform of love, that reminder of who people really are, Lord, that mother love that holds no matter what. Allow us to live in that place. From that gratitude, allow a humble honoring to take place. An honoring those who are working hard, Lord, as caregivers. An honoring, Lord, that maybe in some way lets them know they are not alone, that they are loved and cared for and held. By you, by us. And allow us, Lord, to just continue to find ways to stand by others, to connect, to serve, to love. In that memory, Lord, in that memory of these two very simple words, that in the end, love wins. Amen.